Welcome back to another review, this time for the anime Akane Banashi, which had 12 episodes and was airing in spring of 2026. Synopsis on any list is only your voice and body master the art. Akane Osaki, captivated since childhood by the magical performances of her father Shinta Arakawa, witnesses a shocking incident during his decisive performance for promotion to Shinichi master rank. 6 years later, now a high school student, she sets her sights on becoming a Shinichi herself, pushing forward in the highly competitive world of Rakugo. The passionate and authentic Rakugo drama begins now. Now we have an anime about Rakugo. I know, shocking. Which, as Google described it to me, is the art of comedic storytelling. Now the show, all the stuff we saw in the show is comedic. I don't know if that is necessarily a prerequisite, or you can also tell sad stories. But this is what Google told me, at least. And it is a very minimalistic way of storytelling. So Rakugo is essentially that you have a person in front telling a story and only having a paper fan and a towel as props. And they can use that paper towel and the paper fan to symbolize any different kind of props. The paper fan example can be chopstick, if need be, can be, I believe, a sake cup at one point. Can naturally also be the fan, could be a sword. Whatever you need it to be, you can try to symbolize it with these two props to enhance the storytelling. That is the main point. Now we follow Akane Osaki, the girl in the middle. She wants to become a master herself. Now, because of the story and something happening to her dad, that is why she wants to join the world as well, and essentially take revenge, if you want to call it that, for her dad, because she feels that he was treated unfairly, which I do agree, but that is at least her motivation at the beginning. And naturally she does love Rakugo. And the show does a pretty good job of explaining how she's trying to become a master, how the normal way would be. At least I don't know if it's 100% correct. There's no reason for me to believe otherwise. But it showcases as examples the hierarchy. You have like a master, and as a master you can take apprentices. Now these apprentices, they start off as like assistants, they do help here and there, they help in the house. It feels very family-like. It feels like everyone from the master and all the apprentices, because the master has multiple apprentices at times, it feels like they are all like a family. They all help each other, but they have clear ranks. They have clear seniority. So someone who is there for a long time is most of the time the most senior, and people below him have to listen to him. But essentially they all try to help each other, at least from what we were able to see. And that is essentially the way that Akane wants to go as well. I assume this is the only way you can really succeed in Rakugo, but I don't really know. I have no idea about the world of Rakugo, because before this anime I did not even know what it is. All the information I have about Rakugo is from the show. So I'm trying to make sense of the things that I am being shown. And I feel like the show does a pretty good job of explaining some of the intricacies. As example, at the end of every episode, we have a little bit of a like 30-second, a minute section where Akane talks about some part of Rakugo with maybe her master or maybe another apprentice. Like as example, the paper fan. They have a little competition where who can name more props that you can showcase with a paper fan, which is very interesting. As an example, they have a bunch of them, like the chopstick, the paper fan itself, the sword. They had like a bunch of other, I believe a sake cup was one of them, which was very interesting. But as they were showing it, I was like, okay, I can, it looks like one. Pretty cool. They also, I don't really remember if that was one of the end sequences, but in the show itself, they also explained a little bit more of the intricacies of the storytelling part itself, that I feel like if I had watched Rakugo itself without any knowledge, I probably wouldn't pick up on that. They're like a little, you know, little tips and tricks to make it more immersive. Because in the end, it is to entertain the people that are watching you. So you try to get them immersed as much as you can. One of them is that whenever, because you are telling a story, there are characters in the story, and you have to act as these characters. Now, not only do you change your accent and maybe your voice for the characters, you also, because you are sitting in front, in, I believe, Caesar, was it Caesar? You are sitting on your knees in the front. You don't really pace around or something like that. So to showcase who's talking, you are looking in different directions. So if you have two characters talking, if character A is talking, you look to the right. And if character B is talking, you look to the left. It looks like these two characters would talk to one another, which again increases the immersion. And is one of those things I probably would never have picked up on if I had watched a real Rakugo in Japan or wherever they are practiced. And I do appreciate, you know, getting a little bit of this knowledge now. I cannot verify how much of that is right, how much of that is wrong. I am only talking about the stuff that I have seen and that got taught to me by the show. In the show itself, the reason that Akane wants to take revenge is because, again, her father got unfairly treated. And to get the revenge, she needs to also become a Rakugo, which means she needs to join a master. Now, there are some requirements. It does feel somewhat shonen-like, because we have a main character who's a little bit of a rebel to try and, or very focused on her goal of this thing, and she's not really accepting any other thing, but she's also doing really good at it and learning really quickly. We have the storytelling would be the wrong word, but we have the typical that I always compare to like shonen battle or shonen sports, where you have like, oh, she hits a wall, she has to train, overcomes the wall, hits another wall, train, overcome, wall, train, overcome. And it feels like that is also how we have structured the progression, which is not a bad way, because it does work very well. But it does feel at points very shonen-like. It doesn't help that there are not a lot of female Rakugo we get to see. There are a lot of male ones. But if I remember, there are like 3 female, and let's see, how many male do we see? Like 7, 8, 9, 10 approximately. So the female representation feels a little bit lower. Just something that as I was watching it, I was questioning maybe that has something to do with it being like an older art form. Maybe there is some stuff of like historic stuff. Maybe women were not really allowed to do that. There's a lot of stuff that, you know, was different like 100, 200 years ago. And maybe that still was upheld for like a long time, even though it didn't really make much sense. Doesn't really matter. Doesn't matter. It does feel like we have a pretty shonen sport like progression. We also have a little tournament which had some interesting things because we get to see some other people that are on a similar level to Akane, or at least at essentially the starting point, because Akane is not officially a Rakugo because she's not being accepted as she is still in school. That is a requirement. The idea is, hey, if you finish school, then we could accept you as an apprentice, which is a very solid requirement, I feel like. Just finish your school first. Then we can always try to make it in Rakugo, because her dad, he worked a long time in Rakugo and did not find success really. So it seems like it is very competitive. At least from what I was able to see. Nonetheless, in the tournament we see some of the other characters, their motivation, and a lot of different people that have a different start point, a different kind of motivation. Some do it to just, you know, be the best. Some do it to further their own careers, which is interesting aspect. I don't really know how big Rakugo is in Japan, so I can't really say how effective that would have been to boost your career in a different field. I don't. The art style is good. I do like the art style quite a bit. Animation is good. This show was pretty entertaining, and it taught me a lot of Rakugo, which I do like. I like learning new things. I'm, you know, not really keen on diving deep into knowledge, but I like the surface level where I'm like, okay, at least I have a good start point. And this show, in my opinion, did a pretty good job. As example, if you're watching anime for quite some time, you probably have watched Full Metal Alchemist. Now there is this one scene where I believe the two muscle daddies or whatever they are, they talk to one another and they say their name, and you know, they start with like Jugemo, and there's this really long name. Now at the time I was like, okay, it's a joke. It's a joke. I don't have any context, so it's some kind of joke. I didn't really bother looking into where this came from. But it turns out that this long name has its origin in a Rakugo, which I, again, did not know. And the Rakugo story itself is shown as very comedic, even though the supposed original was somewhat darker. But now that I know where this comes from, it makes a lot more sense, because the name is essentially a bunch of names added together, and all of these names are for prosperity, essentially, of the child. Now, you probably know, but like 200-300 years ago, even 100 years ago at this point, the life expectancy of children and humans in general was not that high. It was a lot higher, but 200 years ago, a lot lower already. Because there's a lot of stuff that you can get killed by. Sickness, malnutrition, not enough money. There's a lot of things that your chance to survive until like teenage years was somewhat low. And these parents, they were like, we want to give our child the best chance they can have. So we give them a name that is full of all good names, like prosperity, luck, good health. All of these names have a specific meaning in some way, shape, or form that is hopefully good for the child in the long run. And it is a very endearing way to name a child, essentially. In the end, the parents just wanted the child to grow up healthy, to grow up and live a good life. Which, again, before I watched the show, I had no context about the name, and now I'm pretty happy that I know at least somewhat of a context, which I do appreciate immensely. Now, let's see what people thought. AnyList has it at 79%, my anime list at 7.94, with 12,500, which is pretty good. For me, I would give it a 9 out of 10. I really like the show, especially because I get a lot of knowledge. I appreciate that I now have some context to something that I always was wondering, but never really wondered enough to look up, the Jugeme part. Also, it was really entertaining for the 12 episodes we got. Now, we do have confirmation of a second season. We will see how it continues then. But for me, the first season was pretty good.